Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building a trauma-informed movement. We're glad to have you join us. My name is Kim Sanders, and I am the president of Ukeru Systems and the chief operating officer at Grafton Integrated Health Network. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to best participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. If you're listening in using your computer speaker system by default, that's perfectly fine. However, if you would rather use your phone, you can just select telephone in the audio panel, and the dial-in information will be displayed for you. We are eager for this to be as interactive as possible. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing them into the questions panel on the control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session before we end today's presentation. In addition, we welcome you to join us throughout the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #StartsWithYou. A few other items we wanted to make you aware of. A copy of the presentation will be distributed in the next few days. We are also recording this conversation and will post it on our website by the end of the week. The topic of creating trauma-responsive schools is one that is very important to us here at Ukeru. If you have attended one of our webinars in the past, you know that we believe that all intervention, regardless if it's educational or behavioral, should be built on an approach of comfort versus control. To help make this a reality, we provide training on the conceptual ideas such as trauma-informed care and conflict resolution, as well as physical techniques that minimize the need for restraints and seclusion. We are not alone in this philosophy. More and more schools across the country are focusing on incorporating trauma-informed approaches into their learning environments. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Lynne, Traina, and Suzanne Adamsky, two school nurses who have taken a leadership role in building support for the use of trauma-informed approaches in Lawrence Township Public School District in New Jersey. Lynne has been a school nurse with Lawrence Township since 2008 and was selected as the Educational Services Professional of the Year in 2015. She advocates for the whole child approach in health and education and has done extensive research in the areas of adverse childhood experiences, toxic stress, and childhood trauma. Prior to school nursing, Lynne worked in the areas of cardiovascular surgery, immunology, and family practice. Lynne received her BSN from the University of New Hampshire and her school nurse certification from Monmouth University. Suzanne has been a school nurse for 7 years, starting at a local boarding school before coming to Lawrence Township. Nursing is her second career. Suzanne received her BBA from Adelphi University, nursing degree from Mercer Community College, and her school nurse certificate from Monmouth University. Welcome, Lynne and Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to hear your story.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Suzanne. It's nice to be here with you all. I started here about 5 years ago, and about a year ago, Lynne started us on this journey when she saw a George Scott presentation. She has become extremely passionate about this subject, and every day I'm actually learning from her, and I just appreciate her taking me on this journey with her.
I'm Lynne Traina. Thanks all for joining us. We're happy to be here. Happy that Ukeru gave us the opportunity to have this platform to speak to you all. And we'll be going through our sort of journey on this trauma-informed approach, and hope you enjoy it.
You can go to the next slide. So a little bit about our public schools here. We're part of Lawrence Township Public School, and we have schools that for pre-K all the way to 12th grade. Our whole public school system has about 3,800 students. We are in Lawrence Intermediate School, which is 4th, 5th, 6th grade. We are a Title I school. Our population, we have 878 kids, 130 staff members, and our school actually takes 4 other elementary schools and combines them, and they all enter in. So they're coming from a school where it may have been 120 kids, 250 kids, to a school of 900. So it could be overwhelming for the new students that are coming in. Also, we have 25% of our school is on free or reduced lunch, and 28% is they're classified with an IEP. Next slide. One of the things we've noticed, the mental health issues in school have drastically risen over the last few years. We've seen an increase in our office. About 35% of our visits now have to do with some kind of mental or health issue. And we're seeing, you know, a lot of that is coming in as, I have a stomach ache, I have a headache. And we assess them physically, obviously, but we always come down to, we ask a question and it has to do with something that's going on in their lives, whether it's a school phobia or something happening at home, an issue with friends. But, you know, it could be also a trend we're seeing on Mondays. Kids have a hard time coming in on Monday morning for a number of reasons. They'll need breaks. They come in, they don't know how to say, I have anxiety or I'm stressed. So headache, stomach ache, we have a break box, which has a stress ball or other textured toys in there, things that they can fidget with for a few minutes. And it does, you can see it ease their tension a little bit. One of the other things they started before I got here was a morning mentoring group, and that started about 6 years ago. And what that is, we have about 5 or 6 students every year at the start of the school year who, for whatever reason, may have trouble being in the cafeteria before school starts with a large group of people, may get themselves into trouble and not be able to self-regulate in there. And we bring them in here, and what we do is we have a chore list. So they come in, greet us, we greet them, they go look at the chore list, and they start, whether it's getting ice ready or cleaning the beds. And then once they're done with that, they go get a breakfast snack, and they come and they sit, and we talk about the night before, things that are happening in school. So one of the things that it helps with is a sense of community and a sense of family for them. Sometimes they didn't do their homework the night before, so either one of the other students can help them or they'll ask us. So that's been a really great addition to our day. And then the last thing we have is Dollars for Scholars. A teacher had realized that a lot of the snacks and things we were doing in the health office were being paid by us. So he started collecting money from teachers, and what we do with that money is we buy food, clothes, whether sometimes kids don't come in with the appropriate attire, no jackets, shoes ripped or broken, they fall in the mud or have an accident, we have that here for them. Snacks, like we showed you, a lot of kids are on free and reduced lunch. We can offer a snack for them if they didn't eat breakfast and things like that. So these are just some of the things that we're trying to establish here at our school. Next slide. Continuing, the mental health, behavioral, and developmental disorders are on the rise. We're seeing that a lot of mental disorders among children are serious changes in the way children typically learn behavior or handle emotions, causing distress and problems to getting through the day. So one of the things that we've noticed is there's been like 1 in 6 children have been diagnosed with a disorder. Either having been diagnosed with anxiety or depression among children has increased. You can see from the ages of 6 to 17 from 8%, now it's over 10, 15%. A lot of the disorders and the mental health disorders, ADHD, which we've all have seen, behavioral problems, anxiety, depression. Those are the most common, and some of these may also occur together. So you may have someone with ADHD and also has a behavioral anxiety and a behavioral because they don't know how to handle that anxiety. Depression and anxiety, we've noticed with all of the studies that we've been seeing, they increase with age. So you may not see that depression and anxiety in the younger years, but as they get older, you'll see that increase over time. Age and poverty level, they also affect the likelihood of children receiving treatment. And one of the biggest concerns I had seen, and a number that's staggering to us, is between 2005 and 2017, the rate of teens who reported symptoms of major depression has almost increased 50%. So just access to mental health is vital for us and in this journey. Next. So about, I guess, between 2015 and 2017, here in Mercer County, we had seen 7 suicides within 2 years here in our small county. So that was pretty devastating to this community. Overall, in that time frame, 2,731 children statewide attempted suicide. So the superintendents here had, in New Jersey, had gotten together, and they planned a community response to all that was going on. The logic behind that was that because of social media, more kids were affected by individual suicides. So even though the suicide might have happened in one town or one certain area, because of social media, all kids were hearing about this and it was affecting them. So they got together and they put together a meeting, and they had the Traumatic Loss Coalition representative come, and they discussed risk factors and stigma, warning signs to parents. And one of the things I took from it was we have a role in building relationships and creating connections with kids and helping make them safe. And that's something that we can do in the school every day. Next.
And I'll take it from here. The step one of the call to action was an evening with George Scott. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's a member of the New Jersey State Traumatic Loss Coalition. And he met with all of us at Rider University in January of 2018. Rider University is right behind us, so it was a quick jump over there. One of their large meeting rooms fits about 750 people, and minus about 50 seats total, there were about 700 community members there. So it was really heartwarming to see so many people come out to address this issue. So this was step one in the superintendent's call to action. There have been successive steps since then. We've had some steps about drug and alcohol use, over parenting, and actually we have one coming up again with George Scott on May 7th. That's about raising healthy children. And what he basically said at first was, you know, we need to all have a very frank conversation about raising our healthy kids and about suicide and mental health issues, because this is clearly a public health issue, and we all need to get involved. So it was, we couldn't keep this stigma quiet anymore. We had to come out and talk about it. And with 700 people there, it was nice to see that, you know, this is the first time that maybe this stigma would disappear, which was, we were hopeful that night, and still are. And he said this was going to be an uncomfortable evening of discussion, because we're going to talk about the things that we should be talking to our kids about, but we're not. There was a safe place in the back of the room. If people felt overwhelmed by emotion, there were therapists with water and snacks and things like that. But he said, we're going to talk about difficult things tonight, so I want you to be prepared. And we have help for you in the back if you feel overwhelmed. He wanted to talk about, what does your nest look like at home? What does the nest look like at school? What protective factors are in place to promote emotional safety, and what can we put in place? Also wanted to remind us to find our community resources because none of us can do this alone. It's too big a job for any one group to do. And I've heard that theme over and over again. What can parents do? He emphasized, talk to somebody at school. Don't keep these thoughts hidden to yourself. When you hide things, that perpetuates the stigma of mental health, and we need to get rid of that. Call a helpline because help seeking is a protective factor. Talk to kids directly because we just don't do enough of that. Try to create a sanctuary for at-risk kids in school and at home. And our basic need is attachment and connectedness. So we need to try to eat dinner together at least once a week without devices because this will decrease the risk of mental health issues in our kids. So some of the things that he said, really, we've got to focus more on, and we've got to put the time into our kids without the devices. Chaotic families increase the risk of suicide by 1,200%. So we've got to try for more harmony within our families, less stress. What we're seeing with road rage and things like that is families are under a tremendous stress, and we've got to find a way to decrease the stress in families so that it doesn't impede our raising healthy kids. And he said the most damaging thing we're doing for our kids is social humiliation, and we've got to stop calling our kids lazy. That's the most common thing that we're doing to humiliate our kids, and we need to stop it. We can move to the next slide. That night with George Scott was the first time I had seen the pair of aces tree, which was kind of shocking to me. I hadn't seen that. And this was the first time I thought, wow, I really need to do something about this. 62% of the U.S. population has one or more aces before the age of 18. 25% have 3 or more aces. 12.5% have experienced 4 or more aces. And with that, when you experience 4 or more aces, now you're in the red zone, where there's about a 50% chance of you having some sort of mental health issue. So it's, this is a difficult time. 4 or more aces, really have to start paying attention. When you have 6 or more aces, now you've taken 20 years off your life expectancy rate. So we've really got to address this issue. And equally important when you examine the branches of the tree, of the ace tree, is the soil in which the tree is planted. Because just as any tree, if you plant your tree in clay, it's not going to do very well. So we need to examine these adverse childhood experiences as well as the adverse community experiences. Now, there were some flaws in this initial ACE study test that was done by Dr. Anda and Dr. Folletti. They only asked 10 questions, essentially because they needed to minimize it for statistical reasons so that they could run statistics. So there were things that were not included that could be potentially adverse childhood experience, things like chronic or serious health issues like childhood cancer where children are experiencing chemotherapy, things like that, natural or man-made disasters, racism. These kind of things were not included in the original ACE study, and that's something that we know now thanks to Dr. Wendy Ellis, who talked about adverse community environments, so we're more aware of some of the other things that are potentially causing problems. And we now know that ACEs can be more pervasive than we even know about. Not every ACE is perceived as traumatic for every child. It's important to consider the unique perspective of each individual. Not every child reacts the same way to an adverse childhood experiences. Siblings may experience the same traumatic events, but react very differently. So we need to treat each child as the unique individual that they are. And best scenarios, treat all kids with universal precautions and treat them all the same, preferably with a trauma-informed approach to everybody. And then that way we don't leave anybody out. We can move to the next slide. Dr. Demian is a instructional supervisor in the district and a friend of ours, and he does a lot of the training with our new staff members to teach them how to use Twitter for professional purposes. And we felt like we were missing some things going on with some of the staff in our building. They were getting awards from different universities, and people were talking about it. We knew nothing about it because we didn't have Twitter accounts, and so we kind of felt lost. So we called Dr. Demian and asked him if he'd come over one morning, and at the beginning of the school year when things haven't started to get too crazy yet, he came over and spent an hour with us and showed us how to get started, and it's been great. It's a great place to find 21st century personal professional development, great way to network with other like-minded people, with supportive PLN and network, and all kinds of research that you can find on here for free. It's like having professional development every day. It's great for that. There are a lot of movies that you can see for free, podcasts, webinars like this, and lots of information that you can get. He also taught us how to participate in chat, how to follow hashtags. You know, you can pretty much pick any topic that you're interested in, put a hashtag in front of it, and search Twitter. You can find a group that's talking about it. So we like to participate in some chats. I want to give a shout out to the alternative educators because I've learned so much from these people. They meet, Alt Ed Chat is Sunday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time, and they are just a wealth of information. They've been dealing with these challenging behaviors most of their careers, so they have a lot of experience. They are willing to share, and I can't emphasize enough how much they have been a part of the growth. And Alt Ed Chat was started by Jillian Damon, and Jillian just won the California Continuing Education Educator of the Year, so congrats to her. She deserves some recognition for that. She's been a wealth of help. School Nurse Chat is usually maybe every couple of months, and Robin Cogan, who's the relentless school nurse, started that, and she is just a wealth of information. And we meet. I think that our next meeting is in May, so we'll be chatting again May 8th at 8 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll be talking again with School Nurse Chat. Trauma Informed Chat, I think that was started by Matthew Portell in Nashville, and that's more of an occasional chat, but again, lots of information. Lead Lap is Lead Like a Pirate. That's some good leadership information, and that meets on Saturday mornings, 10:30 Eastern time. It's just 10:30 to 11, but wealth of leadership type information, and great people to follow. Cybrary Jerry Blumengarten is great if you are looking for the Twitter chat schedule. He also has the schedule for ed camps, which are very popular here in New Jersey. I'm not sure how popular they are in the rest of the country, but he's got a schedule for the Twitter chats, for ed camp chats, any information that you might be looking for in general education. Check out cybraryman.com, or his Twitter tag is @cybraryman. A lot of good information there. He's got tons of resources, just great stuff. I think that's it for that slide. We can move on. So once we were on Twitter, I was checking things out, and I saw this town hall an ad for a town hall chat. The Resilience movie with a Twitter town hall chat following. So I watched the trailer of the movie, and I said, I gotta take a look at this. So I signed up and I watched the movie, and following the movie, the producer of the movie and Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris and some of the other people involved in the movie did the Twitter town hall chat afterwards. And there was just a wealth of information. You could ask questions. I think they stayed around for an hour after the movie, and I just sat looking at my computer screen when the movie ended, and I just thought to myself, I got to do something about this. This isn't something that I can sit still and do nothing about. This is just too important. So it's a movie that you need. It's licensed, so you can't just go on Amazon. You can go to their website, check out KPJR Films for local viewings. You can buy it. I think it's about $100. You can buy it, but you have to go through a licensing process. They do show it in different parts of the country and the world, so you are able to go to different locations and watch it if that's what you'd like to do. But again, you can buy it as well. I learned about the ACE study there with Dr. Folletti and Dr. Anda. I learned about Dr. Jack Shankoff from Harvard Center on the Developing Child, which if you haven't checked out that website, I would recommend that. It's developingchild.harvard.edu. If you haven't done that, there's a wealth of information there. But this is essentially where the intense research really started to, where I started here. I want to also talk a little about Miss Kendra's list. It's, this was in the Resilience movie. We have it here up in our office, and we talked to some of our challenging kids in the back about Miss Kendra's list, and we do a little talk about that. It's basically a therapeutic trauma program that schools can use to help kids open up about toxic stress in their lives and about feelings and about appropriate behavior with kids and inappropriate behavior. It gets kids talking about basically the things that we don't talk about and we need to. So that's how that started. You can go to the next slide. These are two of the most important views, I think, starting on the trauma-informed journey. If you haven't seen Matthew Portell's Edutopia video of his Fall Hamilton Enhanced Option School in Nashville, take a look. This PowerPoint will be available afterwards, and we're not going to watch any videos today, but I did link all of the videos that I recommend here. So when you get a chance, Matthew's video is only 8 minutes, and I think the next video with Dr. Bruce Perry is only 18 minutes. So if you get a chance, it's really worth it. Matthew's video is really where I started really thinking, okay, now I understand the brain science. Now he shows me how to put that into effect, and it was nice to see that translation from brain into the actual school and how it works. It's a great 8-minute video. Talks about the makings of a trauma-informed school to promote safety, support, and nurturing. And he says the biggest mind shift really is for the staff, not so much the kids. They have a mental health practitioner. They use the Leader in Me curriculum. They focus on SEL. They have peace corners, relationship building. They focus on staff wellness, tap in and tap out. And they are not compliance driven, but we've got your back is what he says. I think what I really liked about this most was it was the first time there was a focus on staff wellness. And that I thought was important. I kept saying to myself, we see a lot of our staff members for stress-related reasons. And over the years, I've thought we have to put more emphasis on staff wellness, because how are we going to take care of these kids and be the best we can be if our staff is not? So this is the first time I had really seen that. So I was really happy to see the focus on that, and I hope in them that continues. Dr. Bruce Perry's, he's a pioneer and leader in the field of child psychiatry and neuroscience, and is a senior fellow at the Child Trauma Academy. And his website is childtrauma.org, and there you can learn about his neurosequential model. So I would definitely recommend you take a look at that. There's so much to learn from him. There's a lot of videos of him that you can watch and learn a ton, and he's written a couple of books as well. This video here talks about the importance of attachments and relationships to the development of the neural pathways in the brain of the young children, especially in the first 2 months of life. And we can go on to the next slide. So we knew this was too important to ignore, and we thought, how are we going to get this information from our office to everybody else we know? How are we going to get people to buy in? How are we going to do this? How do we get this important information out? So we spent about 6 months talking to everybody that would come into our office, and we told them all about the Resilience movie, and we kept talking, but we still were frustrated because we just couldn't move it forward. So our friend Jay Billy is a principal in the district, and he wrote the book Lead with Culture by DBC Publishing, and he was across town, and I had read an article that Matthew Portell had written, and he was describing the importance of valuing your staff and having a strong culture in order to implement a trauma-informed approach. So when I was reading that article and I thought about culture, and I thought, well, gee, who do I know that knows something about culture? Naturally, I thought of Jay, and so I sent him Matthew's video, and I said, would you just take a look at this if you have time in the next few days? If you can take a few minutes, the video's 8 minutes, you know, just take a look and let me know what you think. So I messaged back to him and I sent him the video. And the video's 8 minutes, and 9 minutes later, Jay was texting back and saying, all right, this is really something. Do you think we can do this in Lawrence? And I said, I think so, but first we need to study the brain science. So I'm going to send you a trailer of the Resilience movie. It's only 3 or 4 minutes. So watch that. If you like it, then we can talk about it more. So then I messaged him that, and that was 3 or 4 minutes. So 5 minutes later, he messaged back saying, wow, this is important. He said, I'm going to buy the movie. He went on the site and he bought the movie, and he went home and he watched it that weekend, and I got a message at about 8 o'clock on Monday morning saying, all right, I'm all in. If you're all in, I'm in. And he has been our biggest cheerleader and our loudest cheerleader, biggest supporter, and we'll be forever grateful for his assistance. We have just moved forward since, and we have just not lost steam. We have just kept going, and if you've read his book, you know that he believes in a culture of yes, and we thank goodness for that, because he said yes to us and has supported us the entire way. We actually presented together last week to our staff, so he has been continually supportive, so I can't thank him enough. You can go to the next slide. So we have 7 schools in our district, and most of our staff have now seen the Resilience movie, and we decided it was time to show the Resilience movie to the community. So Jay and I and his guidance counselor put together a flyer, and we started advertising in town. And in January, we held a community conversation, and we had the police and the health department, and we had a panel that to talk to the community afterwards. And it was about 80 community members came. And the panel that we had afterwards included the student assistance counselor from the high school, an elementary guidance counselor, a counselor from Good Grief, which is a local grief agency here in Mercer County, and a counselor from the Carrier Clinic, which is a local behavioral health facility. And so it was successful, and it was just another way to bring this out to the community. And since then, Jay's been generous enough to lend the movie out to pretty much anybody who asks. If there's a nonprofit or a group that wants to borrow the movie, he's more than willing. We have lent it to several nonprofits in Mercer County, and a large local hospital is wanting to show it to their entire staff. So we're making some headway there, and very excited about the way that is moving forward. And you can go to the next slide. Ed camps are very popular here in New Jersey, as I said prior. I'm not sure how popular they are in the rest of the country, but they're a great way to get this message out as well. Ed camps can be topic specific, or they can be just general ed topics. They can be cozy, small groups with chairs set up in a circle, or it can be lecture style, where you set up your own slideshow and do it sort of in a lecture presentation. But you should come to an ed camp prepared to facilitate the topic of conversation. And it's great. You meet like-minded people. If they're interested in the same topic or just general ed topics, you end up meeting some of the people in your professional learning network or your PLN face-to-face, which a lot of times you don't get to do that because you're on Twitter and you don't have time. They're usually held on a Saturday morning from about 8 to 12 or 8 to 2. Just a really nice venue, small amount of time on a Saturday morning. A coffee edu is similar, but there's no specific topics. You just meet at a local coffee shop on a Sunday morning, and you let the education topics flow. That's another nice way to present. So we can go to the next slide. These are some of the books that we recommend. Couldn't fit all the books that we recommend, but thought would give you a little taste of the things that have been pivotal for us. If you're interested in learning more about interacting with Twitter, there's 140 Twitter Tips is your go-to book. And we're fortunate to have the authors live here in New Jersey, so we get to interact with them maybe more so on a professional development level. The Deepest Well and The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog are great for learning about the neuroscience behind trauma, toxic stress, and ACEs. So those are just phenomenal books. Bruce Perry also wrote Born for Love, Why Empathy is Essential, another great one. If you're interested in learning more about challenging behaviors, Help for Billy by Heather T. Forbes also comes with a study guide, and you can do a staff book study with that, and that's a great resource. Lost at School by Ross Green is another popular choice. Jessica Minahan wrote the Behavior Code Companion. It's a book with strategies for supporting students with anxiety-related or challenging behaviors. She's a special educator and a behaviorist, and she does some work with Harvard as well. Kristen Sowers and Pete Hall wrote two books about trauma-informed practices in school. They wrote Fostering Resilient Learners, and they also wrote Relationships, Responsibility, and Regulation, which I haven't read that one yet, but I understand that's more for administration, whereas Fostering Resilient Learners is definitely a classroom type book, school-based book. Some good books about implementing trauma-informed approach in schools. Jim Sporleader and Heather Forbes wrote this one together, and it provides real-world experiences with great resources provided at the end of the book. And one more good one, Building Resilience in Students Impacted by Adverse Childhood Experiences by Romero, Robertson, and Warner. This has a little bit more of an elementary focus, but has some good resources embedded in the text as well. And we can go to the next slide. I was fortunate enough to attend the Creating Trauma-Sensitive School Conference in February of 2019. What an experience that was. There were 1,200 people there, and they're expecting 1,500 in the 2020. So if you're interested in that, it's being held at the Hyatt in Atlanta, February 16th to the 18th. That's President's Weekend of 2020. It was a phenomenal experience. You get to meet all people like you. A lot of the speakers were talking about how you could leave your purse anywhere, and you know, with such an ethical group, you didn't have to worry about anything being stolen. It was really nice. This Sunday night, that Creating Trauma-Sensitive Schools is sponsored by attachedtraumanetwork.org. So I would check them out, either createtraumasensitiveschools.org or attachedtraumanetwork.org. Either way, you'll get to learn about the conference there. The first Sunday night, we had a keynote by Dr. Allison Jackson. She was a phenomenal speaker, and she was talking about, she told a story about a health assistant at a behavioral health facility that many patients came back to see because he really cared about them, and he was really effective in helping them become mentally well. So she said, you don't need letters behind your name to have a life-altering connection with another human being. And that really stuck with me. I guess that health assistant's name was Howard, and so if you follow #FindYourHoward, you'll meet people that know of this experience or have had this experience. Really life-changing. That really stuck with me. She also said that Manu Sheikh of the London School of Economics said, in the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about brains, but in the future, they'll be about the heart. And of course, Brené Brown says leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage effective and unproductive behavior. Boy, isn't that true? Most of us know that for sure. Dr. Melissa Saden did the Saturday morning keynote, and she said, you know, there are 1,200 people here trying to change the world, and I just am so thankful to be here. And I felt just as she did. It was really a moving experience. She talked at length about the school shootings, and she talked about it's not about the guns. It's we need to talk about the children who are hurting and who's helping them, and that we're called to a revolution by the children who need us, albeit a peaceful one. Alex Chevron-Venet is a college professor in Vermont. She talked about finding your north. Check out her blog. She's really got a lot of accessible information on her website. So check her out. Lot of good information from her. Then I got to see James Moffett. He's principal at Derby Hills Elementary School in Kansas. And he brought his real-world experience as a trauma-informed principal, and he described the process in phases. He talked about the potential barriers, about the shift in thought necessary for staff members to take, and he talked about changing our traditional approach to behavior away from seclusion and exclusion to helping students create their own connections in school and to deepen relationships with caring adults in the school. And every morning he says to his kids, "We love you and there's nothing you can do about it." Another thing that really sticks with me. This I find to be true. He said teachers and staff can no longer hand off the tough kids to social workers, admin, counselors, and behaviorists because the job's just too big for any one group to handle. Teachers need to be able to be their first intervention, and that intervention is relationship with the student. So basically, you know, connect so you don't have to correct so much. Jim Sporleader was the final speaker that I got to see. I was fortunate enough to see his Paper Tiger at night, that documentary of Jim's school, Lincoln High School in Walla Walla, Washington. He was, you know, a pioneer, one of the first to implement a trauma-informed approach. So it was really nice to be able to meet him in person and listen to him talk. He also spoke on the last day of the conference, and he said that this is a movement that's gaining speed, and trauma responsive becomes who you are as a person. It's an internal change. So be that one caring adult relationship for our kids. If you're looking for more trauma-informed seminars ahead, Matthew Portell and his group are running the Trauma-Informed Educators Network Conference in Nashville this summer, July 15th and 16th. And then Pete Hall and Kristen Sowers are running their seminar, Trauma Invested Institute for Fostering Resilient Learners. That's also July 15th and 16th in Tacoma, Washington. So you'd have to choose between these two. A lot of good conferences in the country. Get on Twitter and find out where they are because there's just so much to see. Next slide. That's it. Yeah, we can stay right there. I was fortunate to collaborate with a colleague, Maureen Hayes, and we published a first collaborative article in this Educational Viewpoints. It's the Journal for New Jersey Principal and Supervisor Association. So the website's on the bottom, so check that out if you get a chance. It's first published article about ACEs, toxic stress and trauma in our students. It's the first one that we've collaborated together, first one that I ever wrote. So just nice to see. It's nice to get the information out to all kinds of groups, and this is an opportunity for us, and but we're just fortunate to be able to do that. So thank you, Maureen. We can move to the next slide. We just want to thank Ukeru for noticing us and contacting us to give us this opportunity and for giving us the platform to spread awareness. We appreciate everybody that came together to make this possible, and lots of people attended today, and we appreciate your dedication to this trauma-informed movement. And one more slide. Our goal has always been to increase awareness to the trauma-informed movement. There will always be naysayers, there'll be non-believers along the way, and you just need to keep yourself focused and remember your why. That's important. Keep your why straight in front of you. Find your people, find your tribe, and just keep trying to move things forward. Thank you, everybody, for so much for joining us today. Yeah, these are the resources, and you'll all get a copy of this.
Thank you so much. You have delivered to us so many resources and statistics, and they're quite staggering, actually. So now it's time for some questions. We have some questions for you here from Ukeru, and we know that those listening probably have some questions. So please know you can type those in on your question panel and just hit organizers only, and they'll come up for us, and we'll ask them for you. So Suzanne and Lynne, we had a couple questions come up. I think people really like your idea of the morning mentoring groups and the chore lists And, we will be posting this webinar on our website, and people are saying, like, if you have a sample chore list, they sure would love to see it. Is that something that might be possible?
Absolutely. We can type it out. It's handwritten right now, but we'll type it out and we can get it to you as soon as possible.
That's awesome. That's great. So again, as well as you all here at Ukeru and at Grafton, we often get, I guess you could say, some skepticism in people that we initially talk to. So how do you all handle in your schools with your, talking with some of the personnel in the school? Do you ever get faced with people saying like, oh, trauma-informed approach, like that's just the latest buzzword, or, like the kids need to sort of buck up and be able to take this stuff? And do you ever hear that kind of skepticism? And if you do, how do you approach that?
It's funny. I think I might have been a little bit of a skeptic in the beginning as well. And, I took the ACEs and was kind of surprised myself, and it kind of was a light and an aha moment, if you will. Some of my reactions to certain things that were going on could have been because of that. And, for an example, we have one child that comes in and demands some things, and when we turn things around for him, instead of saying, you can't do that, and we give him a choice of two things, he calms down because he's in control now, and he's taking, and he feels like he chose what he wanted to do. So if you give it a chance, you can see a major difference. And he actually has a grandmother that is taking care of him, and she came to the resilience community town hall, and she just stood up, and she actually, Lynne had given her the ACEs to take, and she was overwhelmed, I think, by what it showed her and what she's dealing with. So you're going to have naysayers. You can't convince everybody, but one step at a time, and it's just amazing if you give them the time and ask a different question in a different way, instead of saying, what's wrong with you today, and ask, what happened to you today? It's amazing, their response.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Jamie, who's joining us today, asking, I wonder how you are able to help convince teachers that trauma-informed education is valuable, even if a student has not been impacted by trauma. I feel like many educators view the trauma-informed lens as offering students as an offering for students who don't deserve it, like offering them a pass.
Now, I think the universal approach is effective for everybody because you don't know what kids have experienced trauma. You have a lot of kids that fly under the radar, the kids that are the cutters that you don't know until, you happen to accidentally see a sleeve. There's a lot of kids that have experienced trauma that do not act out, that are flying under the radar and want to do well so that they don't cause attention to themselves. So you don't know when the kids walk through the door who's traumatized and who isn't. Some are more obvious than others. Some come with a history that you're aware of. Others do not. And so, you're surprised a lot of times. So I haven't found that staff do not buy in here. They've been looking for answers for years for why are we seeing this behavior? Why are we seeing all these school shootings? Why are we seeing such anxiety and behavioral issues so early in kids? And I think this has provided a somewhat of an answer for them. They would like a quick fix. That's not the case. That isn't, it's a process, and it's it requires a lot of spokes on the wheel to be addressed. But I think they're glad that they have, after they see the resilience movie, they're more likely to say, wow, I had no idea, and I'm glad I finally know, and I'm ready to get on this train. How do we move forward?
We're also not ignoring the behaviors. I mean, if they do something that is against, the school rules, or just against common courtesy, let's say, they're still held accountable. but we just may dive a little deeper into why they're feeling that way. And again, building the relationship between the students and the teachers, or students and any adult, is really the key, is what we're looking to do.
You can be kind and still keep somebody accountable.
Yeah.
You can do it in a calm
Absolutely.
way. You don't have to yell. You don't have to, you don't have to be punitive. But you can do that, and I think it just takes a little bit more patience, and that takes a little bit of work. And it takes a team. Nobody can do it by themselves. You've got to have the whole staff trained, and you've got to believe it and have everybody on board.
Absolutely. So often it's really not what the actual expectation is or the limit. It's actually how it's delivered to someone. And I know that you mentioned this before in your presentation. You talked about how a lot of these resources, there is much for the staff or the employees and the teachers as it is for the students. And I know for us here at Ukeru and Grafton, that was a big step for us. That so often, especially in education and the behavioral health field, we find ourselves with every single person on a team is focused on the student, where in reality, we need to be equally as focused on our employees and our staff, because these jobs, regardless in a classroom or in a group home or in a psychiatric residential treatment center, are tough. And so if you could just even talk a little bit more about how you're taking care of your teachers, because again, we have found at Grafton with this whole philosophy of comfort versus control, that has to start with how management and those of us in leadership positions treat everyone. Because you definitely can't ask people like, go be nice to kids if they're not being treated with kindness.
Yeah, when I saw Matthew's video, the EdUtopia video first, that was the first time I had seen an emphasis on staff wellness. And like I said earlier, for years, we see not as many staff as kids, but we see a lot of staff members, and usually it's for stress-related issues. So somebody who's, a teacher, a woman teacher that pulls into the parking lot and her husband asked her for a divorce this morning, she can't go into school, put her Wonder Woman costume on, and act like nothing happened. We've got to take care of people, and this was the first time I had seen that as an emphasis, where the wellness of staff was emphasized. So now we had our Lawrence Township Wellness Professional Development last Thursday, and that's the second year we've done that, which has been great for staff. In the morning usually we'll have a speaker. We had 2 speakers this year. Michael McKnight spoke to the elementary staff about trauma-informed approaches, and then George Scott in another part of the building spoke to the middle school and high school about, I think that one was about anxiety and
mental health and suicide and ACEs and all of those things that our teens are starting to go through.
And then once we were done with the morning talks, then we had an hour to attend the wellness fair, which had acupuncture and massage tables and all kinds of community services. You could make appointments while you were there for a massage or an acupuncture treatment, get your blood pressure taken. There were all kinds of resources, all new doctors to the area. And then when that was over, they had food trucks, which was great. I think that's the first year we've done that. I think there were about 8 food trucks pulled up to school, and they had the cafeteria and outside tables all set up for us to eat. It was a really nice day, so we all ate at the food trucks, and then came back inside, and you had afternoon choice. You could pick. There were 2 sessions, an early afternoon and a later afternoon, and you got to pick from many. I think there were over 30 choices of what you wanted to do. Did you want to learn how to knit? Did you want to learn about aromatherapy, feng shui, cooking? I mean, there were tons of choices, and I think not only does that bode well in that the township is saying we value healthy staff members, but more staff members are actually attending that professional development, whereas, you know, sometimes you just call out sick that day because it's of no interest to you. If it's going to be dyslexia for the third time, you know, I'm not going to go for that. I'm going to call out. I'd rather have a day and have some doctor appointments. This way, we have a high involvement of staff members at a wellness day actually getting well. And it was really nice to see all of our staff participate in that. So that was a great day, second year in a row, and hopefully we'll see many more. Hopefully it's an annual Wellness Day PD.
Agreed.
Absolutely. So we have time for just a couple more questions. And we had a question about, you know, how do you have any advice on how to approach a situation when you sense that there is an issue? However, the child's family may not be so open to receiving mental health assistance or help. So you talked about the number of sick visits that you have and how that's quite a large percentage are actually more related to mental health types of issues. But do you find yourself in situations where either the family, you know, again, the family may not be accepting of that, a bit of denial, or just there's that stigma that although in this country we are trying to break down is still there, and maybe families are just not as open to thinking their child needs that type of help?
I'll start the answer to this one. I know a lot of times, you know, we can see a trend of, on our computers and our health program that we use, how many times a child comes in. We can see when they come in. Maybe it's before lunch, or they're a little nervous about going to recess, or maybe it's before gym class and they don't like physical activity. We can see a trend, and once we hit a certain number, let's say it's 15 or 20 visits to just a nurse's office, we give the teacher a call, and we may call home and say, we're noticing something, and, you know, they've been in to see us X amount of times, you know, before we bring it, we just wanted to touch base. Is there anything going on at home that we may not know about that we should know about, and we can help them through the day? Sometimes we get, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then we might call guidance and bring them into the picture. Again, this is a team effort. And a lot of times we'll get someone saying, thank you for calling. I can't believe you've noticed that. Sometimes they forgot their medicine, or if something's going on at home and they didn't know who to talk to or who to pick up the phone to call here, and we called them first. So that's one way that we are starting the conversation.
Yeah, we kind of do a tag team. So we may talk to the teacher, and then we'll talk to a parent. And what we're finding, too, is that kids are on medication, and they are seeing a therapist, but they're not, the parents are not telling anybody. And then once we start to dig a little bit, the parent will say, well, yeah, you know, he does suffer from anxiety. He does see a counselor weekly, and we'll get a little bit more information. But I think the more we talk about it as society, the less the stigma will be. That seems to be the case. We're seeing a lot more. We post a lot more studies about anxiety and depression and how to address this with your children, and we're trying to talk a lot more about it in our district. And so I'm seeing people more open to talking about it.
We have a lot too. That's why I think we need more mental health in our building, because our guidance counselors are overwhelmed as well. I'll ask a parent, do you mind if we send them to guidance? This is, their stomach is okay, their headache isn't a headache. You know, can we send them down there? And they'll say okay. And I think that's the initial, it's a slow process. They're not going to go out and get help, but we send them down there, and then resources can be given to them.
Absolutely. So one more question. We have a person who's joining who's asking if you've done any work incorporating mindfulness in the classrooms, or are you aware of any work around that in a classroom setting?
Yeah, actually we do. We have our librarian here actually she did a professional development on Wellness Day on the Calm app. And that, I don't know if people know that, but the Calm app is free to all educators. So I would try to get the Calm app on my phone. It's got a lot of self-regulation type mindfulness calming activities in that app. But there's a plethora of resources out there for mindfulness. There's tons out there, and a lot of it's free for educators. So just start looking and poking around. But if you don't have the Calm app on your phone, check it out. It's free, and it's free for educators, and I think that is tool number one you should have on your phone.
That's wonderful. I want to be sensitive to everybody's busy schedule, and it looks like we've reached 5 o'clock. So that will be the conclusion of our time together. But again, thank you so much, Suzanne and Lynne, for being with us today and presenting such valuable information. We sure hope that this is only the beginning of continued dialogue. For everyone listening, please remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and look for that hashtag #StartsWithYou. And again, thank you all very much, and please enjoy the rest of your day.